On last week's show, our Memorial Day weekend show, I presented the 5 biggest impact segments of my radio show over the past 10 years. And this is from listener response. And one of those segments was from March 19th, 2017, that involved my next guest, General Tom McInerney. On March 19th, 2017, General McInerney, with the assistance of Admiral Ace Lyons, provided information that many people believe at the time was controversial, that was conspiracy theory, but in fact has been proven to be 110% accurate and incredibly far ahead of the curve. In fact, it was finally, if you will, the bought-off lamestream fake media was forced to report on some of these issues that General McInerney brought forward in 2017 because of, well, the the transcriptions of General Flynn's conversation with the Russian ambassador Kislyak, and the fact that those conversations were not unmasked. They were not unmasked, and we know that because of the dates in which the call occurred with General Flynn and Kislyak. It was determined that they were not unmasked, and as in the acting director of national intelligence, Richard Grinnell, stated, well, the transcripts were not the work product of the intelligence community. The intelligence community consists of the 17 intelligence agencies associated with the United States government, including the FBI. So if the transcripts and the phone call wasn't recorded through the intelligence community, and the Inspector General of the Department of Justice had stated in his report that it was an incidental surveillance, that only leads to one other option. And that is what General McInerney, along with the support of Admiral Ace Lyons, came on our show and spoke about on March 19, 2017, that there was an illegal surveillance system implemented by the Obama administration outside of the NSA, a system where you would not leave footprints if you looked and listened to a particular conversation or, if you will, infiltrated somebody's computer. That's called a parallel platform. And the one in which General McInerney presented was called the Hammer, and this was put forward through a whistleblower by the name of Dennis Montgomery. A little background on General McInerney. For 35 years, General McInerney served as a pilot, a commander, a strategic planner in the United States Air Force. Tom retired from military service as Assistant Vice Chief of Staff of the Air Force and Director of the Defense Performance Review, reporting to the Secretary of Defense. Tom led the Pentagon's reinventing government effort, visiting more than 100 leading-edge commercial companies to assimilate their ideas about business reengineering. General McInerney graduated from the great United States Military Academy and earned a master's degree in international relations from George Washington University. He also attended the Armed Forces Staff College and National War College. It's my honor to welcome back General Tom McInerney. Tom, welcome back to Operation Freedom.
Great to be here, Dave. Thanks very much.
Well, Tom, you and Admiral Lyons made huge waves on March 19, 2017. In fact, the reports were that night that it shook Washington when you came on the show and spoke about the parallel platforms, the illegal surveillance done by the Obama administration, in particular the Hammer. I replayed that interview, as I mentioned in your introduction, this past week. Had huge positive feedback once again on your interview from March 19, 2017. And in fact, Tom, I believe General Flynn's exoneration is linked with the information that you and Admiral Lyons presented over 3 years ago on this show.
Well, it certainly is now proving out to be. We did not know that then, and we didn't know all the information that it was gathering up. And clearly that key piece of information that came about that President Obama was made privy to, the Hammer information, and they did not have to unmask, as you were pointing out in your introduction, General Flynn's name. So it didn't come from a legal intel system. It came from this illegal CIA, FBI system, the Hammer. Now, the reason this is so significant is, and by the way, none of the mainstream media is picking that up to include Fox News. Dave. So I commend you greatly for it. But the significance is they picked up a lot of other things. Does that system still exist? But even more important, since we now have the transcripts of General Flynn and Ambassador Kislyak that was supposed to have showed collusion between the Trump administration, his national security advisor, and the Russians, that's clearly what all this congressional and other people were saying on the Democratic side, that the Mueller report, all this tried to intimate that. It's important our listeners understand that, because if that transcript would have been disclosed, Mike Flynn never would have been fired. Why Vice President Pence went to the president, and because he was set up by Sally Yates, then the acting attorney general, without listening or reading the transcript. You don't listen to them anymore, you just read them. But the fact was that was such a perfect conversation, and they tried to make it out to be an evil conversation of collusion. And now, since the brilliant Ambassador Rick Grinnell released that to the public, and you and I and the rest of the world have read it, it is absolutely a perfect communication. And it points to even more reasons of the collusion to try to oust the Trump administration through a coup d'etat, a soft coup d'etat. And unfortunately, it goes right into the Oval Office of the Obama administration, because President Obama had to know about the hammer. He would have asked the FBI director, Comey, well, where did you get this information? Because his NSA rep would not have told him about it. And Comey would have had to tell him, well, we have this in collusion with the CIA, who is not supposed to listen to any communications in the United States unless it goes abroad. And even then, they don't do it. That's the NSA role. So we now see the corruption in the intelligence community and the Department of Justice with the FBI, as well as with the Attorney General, Sally Yates. And this is huge, huge information, and exonerates General Flynn, despite having a rogue judge who had to be complicit with the Obama administration. So you can see the complicity that this is all bringing out. Not only does it go to the Congress, to Adam Schiff and others, Nancy Pelosi, it goes to the judicial branch, it goes to the Department of Justice and the intelligence community and the Oval Office, the office of the president. This is so explosive. It is the most corrupt act that has ever been in U.S. politics. And that's why the Democrats are just frantic. That's why they tried to impeach the president. That's why they had the Mueller investigation. All these things they've been doing to try to cover up the exposure of this corruption by the Obama administration against the Trump administration.
Folks, we're speaking with General Tom McInerney. You know, Tom, the transcripts were released Friday late afternoon. And as you stated, when you read the transcripts, it was support. David Ignatius from the Washington Post had come out with an article that at the time that it was leaked to him that General Flynn was negotiating sanctions and reduction of sanctions, and this was the collusion. In fact, Tom, when you read the transcripts, General Flynn did no such thing. In fact, he potentially prevented a world war and a military conflict from instigating by telling everybody, let's keep cool heads on this. In fact, he was advocating for peace and restraint And they spun this as he was colluding with the Russians and selling out the country to the, when in fact nothing like that happened. In fact, he potentially prevented a world war.
Yes, and you wonder why the first director of national intelligence, former Senator Coates, did not release it. You wonder why his replacement, McGuire, temporary, didn't do something about it. It took Ambassador Rick Grinnell, who was in there for a couple months or a little more, to do all this. This could have saved the country 2 years of the Mueller investigation, $40 million, if this would have been released at the very start of the Mueller investigation. So Mueller knew. Mueller had to know this. And then how about Rosenstein?
Right.
Rosenstein is going to testify this coming week in front of Lindsey Graham's Senate Judicial Committee. Why did he even appoint a special counsel in Mueller? This is the one document that blows the whole thing wide open, Dave. And it came through the source that we reported that back in 2017 in March on this program. All along, you have been leading the parade in understanding the corruption that the Democratic Party, the Obama administration, and all those people that were left in place that came from the Obama administration. That's where the president made a huge mistake. Anybody that in his NSC and any of those other offices should have been fired, should have been terminated immediately. But they helped perpetuate this collusive action and corruption that originally started with Brennan, the intelligence community, the IC, CIA, DNI, Clapper, and going right on down over to Comey, the FBI, the Department of Justice, Sally Yates. All of them are guilty in trying to create a coup d'etat against the Trump administration.
Well, in addition to that, Tom, Dennis Montgomery, the whistleblower, said from the very beginning that Mueller was the one who funded and provided cover for that illegal surveillance system. And then they put Mueller in charge of this special Tom, Mueller was there to protect his own rear end from this coming out.
Correct. So
the other question I have, Tom, is Pence. Why would Pence not ask to see the transcript before he ran to the president and said, hey, General Flynn was lying, you need to fire him? What was he doing? Why didn't he ask to see the transcript?
Exactly. I blame Pence equally as much as I blame Rosenstein, because he should never have kicked this thing off. And once he didn't do his due diligence and look at the transcript itself, which he could have done before he ever went to the president, he let the president down a great deal. And unfortunately, I think he's now going to be exposed.
And don't you find it interesting, Tom, that as this started to blow up, if you will, the information coming forward, the truth coming forward on the hammer, on the illegal surveillance, on the Obama administration, just a number of days before that, Sidney Powell was on Fox Business News, and she dropped the hammer, if you will. She brought the information out. She mentioned the hammer, of course. And then all of a sudden, this event happens in Minneapolis, and next thing you know, we have this civil unrest, the riots, the looting. The nidus, obviously, of this was a horrendous event with the death of George Floyd. But initially the protests, and protesting is what this country is about. Nothing wrong with that, but we're peaceful. But then it morphed into these riots and the looting, and with Antifa being involved. Tom, I don't know, maybe I'm being a conspiracy theorist, but I find the escalation from peaceful protests into this huge mass unrest situation occurring just as the exoneration of General Flynn is hitting to be questionable in my mind about the timing of all this.
Well, it certainly is suspicious, and we're getting xenophobic because all of this stuff that happened, the Chinese and the Wuhan coronavirus happens just after or during the period of trying to impeach President Trump. Then you have the coronavirus that destroys this fantastic economy we had. And then after the coronavirus, they certainly are taking advantage of it. And every one of the cities that they can't control is run by a Democrat. Every one of them. Now, Minneapolis hasn't really tried to stop it. The mayor himself is completely useless. But if the people of Minnesota want to elect people like that, then they deserve what they get. But the fact is this is very interesting that all this stuff is coming together, isn't it, Dave? And you become to get xenophobic and just very suspicious because of the timing of it all. And the Democratic Party has gotten desperate. Schumer is now calling this the Republicans' Russian hoax, on the conspiracy hoax, he calls it. Why? Because this now is coming out. What you and I are saying and what your listeners are getting are showing the absolute corruption by the whole Democratic Party. It had to be involved with, from Hillary, what she funded on the Russian dossier, right into the White House, going along the 5 January meeting that the president had, and Susan Rice's memo to herself the same day on the inauguration. It's done after she leaves office, and she writes this. We'll play it by the book. All of this was trying to leave fingerprints that they were not corrupt, but they were all corrupt, and they are complicit. And you know, the mainstream media, before the transcripts were released, up to a week ago or 3 days ago, was saying that the transcripts show that General Flynn was colluding with the Russians and working on the sanctions, to relieve the sanctions. That's not true. We read the transcript, and it isn't. So it means that the mainstream media, CBS, ABC, NBC, MSNBC, were all complicit in this corrupt effort to try to get President Trump out of office. Now, that is something that has never happened in our history before, and their fingerprints are all over it. And it's something that the American people have got to realize, that the Democratic Party is a corrupt party through and through.
And and Tom, I also believe there are a number of people with R's after their name that haven't been patriots as well. That they knew what was happening. They allowed it to happen. They looked the other way because they were looking at their own. Maybe they were leveraged. Maybe they were compromised. But they, in the process, Tom, they sold our country out as well.
Well, look at Rosenstein, who created the special counsel. Look at the FBI director, Wray. Yeah. We just found out today that Dana Bonte was ousted from being the chief lawyer in the FBI or high up there. And he was fired not by Wray. And you say, well, why didn't Wray fire him?
Right.
Because he was the one that didn't want to go along with the DOJ's going to Judge Sullivan and pulling back the prosecutorial against General Flynn.
Well, Ray's been there for a couple years, and let's face it, Tom. Let's face it, he's been too busy, essentially covering up for what the FBI was involved in, and he was so busy doing that. You know what? These Antifa thugs were able to integrate themselves throughout many urban cities in our country, and now the result of which is this rioting and looting. If the FBI was more intent on counterintelligence and working on counterterrorism activities in our country, as opposed to trying to cover their own rear ends of what happened in the illegal surveillance issues, we would be a lot better off.
Yeah. And by the way, Bonte wasn't fired by Ray, who he worked for Ray. He should have been fired by Ray. They say it was higher ups in DOJ. Well, you know what that means. Attorney General Barr. He's the only one that could do that. And so Attorney General Barr, we finally got a good Attorney General after having Sessions and Rosenstein that were absolutely useless and were complicit. And so the fact is, as you say, there were Republicans that were supporting this. I don't know what